The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the dark void between stars. It was bigger than most moons, with metal corridors that stretched for miles in every direction. Today, the station buzzed with activity unlike anything seen in 1,000 years. Ships from across the galaxy had arrived, carrying the most powerful beings in known space. In the Great Council Chamber, 12 different alien species sat around a circular table that could hold a small city. The Krillians looked like walking tanks covered in red scales, their yellow eyes burning with barely controlled rage. The Ethereals appeared almost like ghosts, their pale blue skin glowing softly as they floated above their seats instead of sitting. The Zephyrians moved as one mind, hundreds of insect-like creatures that spoke in perfect unison. Ambassador Thexmar of the Krillian Empire stood up. His massive frame cast shadows across the entire chamber. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "We have waited long enough," he said. "The humans have gone too far. They spread through our galaxy like a disease, taking worlds that belong to us. They ignore our warnings. They show no respect for the natural order that has kept peace for 10,000 years. The other ambassadors nodded their agreement. The Vorthak representative, a creature that looked like a walking tree with too many eyes, rustled its bark-like skin. The humans arrived barely 200 years ago. Already they have claimed 15 star systems. They mine our asteroids. They build cities on our worlds. They act as if they own the galaxy. They are primitive," added the ethereal speaker, its voice echoing in everyone's minds rather than their ears. "Their technology is crude. Their minds are simple. Yet they multiply faster than the Zephyrian swarms. If we do not stop them now, they will consume everything." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. For the first time in galactic history, all 12 major species agreed on something. War. Thexmar activated the quantum transmitter. The device hummed to life, its energy field crackling as it prepared to send a message across hundreds of light years in seconds. The transmission would reach Earth's Solar Council directly. "To the human leaders of the solar system," Thexmar began, his words being recorded for history. "You have ignored our previous warnings. You continue to expand into space that does not belong to you. The Galactic Council, representing 12 civilized species and over 4 trillion beings, demands your immediate withdrawal from all systems beyond your original 3 colonies. You have 72 standard hours to comply." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Around the chamber, the other ambassadors watched with satisfaction. This was how things should be done. The strong speaking to the weak. Order being restored. "If you refuse," Thexmar continued, "you will face the combined military might of the Galactic Council. Our fleets number in the thousands. Our weapons can destroy planets. Our armies have conquered entire star systems. We have ruled this galaxy since before your species learned to make fire. Withdraw now, or be destroyed." The transmission ended with a sharp crack of energy. Thexmar sat back down, confident that the humans would see reason. No species in galactic history had ever been foolish enough to fight the Council when all 12 members stood united. Across the galaxy, the message traveled through space, at speeds that bent the laws of physics. It passed through wormholes and quantum tunnels, racing toward a small yellow star on the edge of the galaxy where humanity had built its first home among the stars. On Earth, President Sarah Chen was having a quiet morning. She sat in her office in Geneva, reviewing agricultural reports from the vertical farms that now fed half the planet. The coffee in her cup was still warm, and outside her window, she could see the Swiss Alps covered in the first snow of winter. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Madam President, we have an urgent transmission from the Galactic Council." Chen looked up from her reports. The Galactic Council rarely spoke to humans directly. Usually they sent their messages through intermediaries or ignored humanity completely. "Put it through to the main screen." The holographic display activated and Thexmar's massive form appeared in the room. Chen listened to the entire message without moving. She did not flinch when he mentioned destroying planets. She did not react when he spoke of armies that had conquered star systems. She simply sat in her chair, sipping her coffee, and listened. When the message ended, the room fell silent. Chen's assistant waited nervously by the door. The president's security team shifted uncomfortably, hands moving closer to their weapons. Everyone expected panic. They expected emergency meetings. They expected the frantic activity that should follow a declaration of war from the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. Instead, President Chen calmly set down her coffee cup. She looked at the empty holographic display where Thexmar's image had been. Then she pressed the reply button on her communicator. "This is President Sarah Chen of the United Earth Government," she said, her voice steady and clear. "We have received your ultimatum and considered your demands." She paused for just a moment, as if deciding what to have for lunch rather than responding to a threat that could end human civilization. "We decline." 2 words. Just 2 simple words that would echo across the galaxy and change the course of history. Chen ended the transmission and turned back to her agricultural reports as if nothing had happened. Her assistant stared at her in shock. "Madam President, shouldn't we call an emergency session of the Solar Council? Shouldn't we mobilize the fleet? Shouldn't we at least warn the colonies?" Chen looked up from her papers. "Why? The colonists are adults. They can make their own decisions. As for the fleet, Admiral Torres knows what to do." She picked up her coffee cup again. "Was there anything else? I have a meeting about wheat production in 20 minutes. The assistant left the room in a daze. Within hours, the news had spread across human space. The Galactic Council had declared war. 12 species with thousands of ships wanted to wipe out humanity, and President Chen had told them no. On the space stations and colonies, people reacted with the same strange calm as their president. Farmers kept farming. Miners kept mining. Children went to school. It was as if the entire human species had agreed to ignore the greatest threat they had ever faced. But if anyone had looked closely, they might have noticed small changes. Cargo ships moved a little more frequently between systems. Mining operations worked longer shifts. The usual civilian traffic patterns shifted in ways that were hard to explain. And in the deepest parts of space, where no one was supposed to be looking, things that had been sleeping for a very long time began to wake up. Back on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council received humanity's response with a mixture of shock and rage. 2 words. After a declaration of war that should have terrified any reasonable species, the humans had sent back 2 words. "They must not understand," said the Vorthak representative. "Perhaps their translation systems are primitive." Thexmar crushed the armrest of his chair with one massive hand. "They understand perfectly. They are either the bravest species in the galaxy, or the most foolish. Either way, they will learn what happens when someone defies the Galactic Council." The order went out across 12 different star systems, the largest armada in galactic history began to assemble. Ships that had never fought together prepared to unite for the first time. Weapons that could crack moons were loaded and aimed at human space. The war that would reshape the galaxy was about to begin. And somewhere, in the dark between the stars, humanity waited. The greatest armada in galactic history began to form at the edge of known space. Ships arrived from every corner of the galaxy, each one representing the military might of civilizations that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. The Krillian dreadnoughts came first. These massive ships looked like floating cities of metal and fire. Each one was 3 miles long, covered in weapon systems that could turn entire moons into dust. Their red hulls glowed with the heat from their plasma cannons, and their crews, of warrior soldiers trained constantly for the coming battle. The ethereal fleet appeared next, their ships seeming to fade in and out of reality as they moved through space. These vessels did not rely on crude weapons like the Krillians. Instead, they carried mind control devices that could turn entire populations into slaves with a single broadcast. The ethereals themselves rarely left their ships, preferring to fight their battles by controlling the minds of their enemies. The Zephyrian swarm brought something different entirely. Their bioships were not built, but grown, like massive insects, that could survive in the vacuum of space. These living vessels could reproduce themselves during battle, creating more ships from the raw materials of destroyed enemies. A single Zephyrian ship could become 100 ships in a matter of hours. More fleets arrived every day. The Morvac brought their gravity weapons that could crush ships into tiny balls of metal. The Centauri brought swarms of small fighters that moved like schools of deadly fish. The Glacial Empire brought ice ships that could freeze entire planets solid. Each species contributed their deadliest weapons and most experienced soldiers. Admiral Vexthor commanded the combined fleet. He was a Krillian, but he had earned the respect of all 12 species through centuries of successful campaigns. Standing on the bridge of his flagship, the Galactic Fury, he watched the fleet grow stronger every day. "How many ships do we have now?" he asked his second-in-command. 12,416 vessels, sir, with more arriving every hour. This is the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history." Vexthor nodded with satisfaction. "And the humans?" Our scouts report minimal activity in their space, sir. We have detected no military buildup, no evacuation of civilian populations. Their defense fleets appear to be running normal patrols as if nothing has changed. This puzzled the Admiral. Every species he had ever fought had shown some reaction to the threat of war. They built more ships, moved their civilians to safety, or tried to negotiate. The humans seem to be doing nothing at all. Perhaps they are too primitive to understand what is happening, suggested his second-in-command. Their technology is still crude compared to ours. They may not realize the danger they face. Vexthor was not so sure. In his long career, he had learned that enemies who showed no fear were usually the most dangerous ones. But the intelligence reports were clear. Humanity had fewer than 200 military ships in their entire fleet. The Council Armada outnumbered them 60 to 1. No amount of bravery could overcome such impossible odds. Meanwhile, in human space, life continued as it always had. On New Montana, a farming colony near the frontier, children walked to school under alien suns while their parents tended to crops that had been modified to grow in foreign soil. The only sign that anything unusual was happening was the increased number of cargo ships that visited the planet each day. Maria Santos lived on New Montana with her daughter. She had served in the Earth Navy for 20 years before retiring to become a farmer. Now she grew vegetables and raised chickens on a world that was 200 light-years from the planet where she had been born. Her daughter Emma came home from school with questions. "Mom, my teacher says there might be a war. She says alien ships are coming to fight us, is that true?" Maria looked up from the eggs she was collecting. "Yes, sweetheart, some of the other species in the galaxy are angry with us. Are you scared?" Maria smiled and put her arm around her daughter. "No, Emma, I'm not scared." "Why not?" "The other kids' parents are scared." Maria looked up at the sky where cargo ships moved back and forth like busy ants. "Because we're ready. Mars, the industrial heart of human space, the factories worked day and night. But they were not building weapons or warships as the alien spies expected. Instead, they continued to manufacture the same products they had been making for decades: mining equipment, construction materials, communication devices. To any outside observer, it looked like humanity was preparing for peace, not war. Dr. James Park worked in one of these factories. He had a PhD in engineering and could have worked anywhere in human space, but he chose to stay on Mars because he liked the work he was doing. Today, like every day for the past 5 years, he was building something that looked like a simple mining laser. His assistant, a young woman named Lisa, watched him work. "Dr. Park, shouldn't we be making weapons?" "Everyone knows the aliens are coming." Dr. Park smiled as he adjusted a tiny component inside the device. "Who says we aren't?" Lisa looked confused. "But this is just a mining laser." "Is it?" Dr. Park connected the final wire and activated the device. The laser beam that emerged was so bright it hurt to look at. "Lisa, this mining laser can cut through solid rock faster than anything the Krillians have ever built. What do you think it would do to their ship armor?" Understanding dawned on Lisa's face. "Everything we've been building has a second purpose," Dr. Park finished. "We've been preparing for this day for a very long time." The same scene was repeated across human space. On Europa, the ice miners perfected drilling techniques that could punch through any material. On Titan, the gas refineries produced fuel that burned hotter than the cores of stars. On the asteroid belts, the rockbreakers built machines that could move mountains. None of it looked like military preparation, because it wasn't supposed to. Humanity had learned long ago that the best weapon was the one your enemy never saw coming. Ondar. Proxima Centauri, the farthest human colony from Earth, Captain Torres watched the reports coming in from the frontier scouts. The alien fleet was massive beyond anything humanity had ever faced. But she was not worried. She had been expecting this day for 20 years. Her communication officer approached her desk. "Captain, we're getting reports that some of the colonists want to evacuate. They're scared about being on the front line." Captain Torres looked out the window of her office at the bustling colony below. Families walked through the streets. Children played in the parks. It looked so peaceful and normal that it was hard to believe a war fleet was heading their way. "Tell the colonists they're free to leave if they want to," she said. "But remind them that this is their home, and we protect our home." Most of the colonists chose to stay. They had spent years building their lives on this distant world. They were not going to run just because someone told them to. As the days passed, the alien armada grew stronger. 12,000 ships became 13,000, then 14,000. Each ship was crewed by experienced warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds. Their weapons could destroy entire cities. Their armor could withstand the heat of stellar cores. But in human space, something else was happening. Something the aliens could not see or understand. Cargo ships moved between colonies carrying supplies that looked harmless. Communication networks carried messages that seemed routine. Construction projects continued that appeared to be simple civilian work. The truth was hidden in plain sight. Humanity was not preparing for war because they had been preparing for war for their entire history among the stars. Every colony, every mining station, every research outpost had been built with one purpose in mind: to be ready for the day when the galaxy came for them. The storm was gathering on both sides. The aliens brought their obvious weapons and their ancient pride. The humans brought something more dangerous: patience, planning, and the willingness to wait for exactly the right moment. Soon, the two forces would meet in the dark between the stars. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had stayed so calm in the face of impossible odds. They were not unmoved because they were weak or foolish. They were unmoved because they were ready. The massive alien fleet reached the edge of human space like a storm cloud blotting out the stars. 14,000 ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready for battle. Admiral Vexthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the view screens that showed the Proxima Centauri system ahead. "Long-range sensors show the system, sir," reported his scan operator. "But we're not detecting any ships." Vexthor frowned. "No defense platforms? No patrol vessels?" "Nothing. Sir, the system appears to be completely empty of military assets." This was wrong. Every civilized species in the galaxy protected their border colonies with at least some defensive forces. Even the most primitive cultures put up some kind of fight when threatened. But human space appeared to be wide open, like a house with all its doors unlocked. "Maybe they evacuated," suggested the communication officer. "Maybe they realized they could not win and ran away." Vexthor was not convinced. In his centuries of military experience, he had learned that things were rarely as simple as they appeared, but the sensor readings were clear. The Proxima Centauri system showed signs of civilian activity, but no military presence whatsoever. "Take us in," he ordered. "All ships, maintain battle formation. Stay alert for traps." The great fleet moved forward, like a pack of metal predators. Each ship bristled with weapons that could level mountains. Their crews were the finest warriors the galaxy had ever produced. They were ready for anything, except for what they found. As the fleet entered the outer edge of the Proxima system, their sensors picked up the usual signs of a thriving colony. Orbital stations around the gas giants, mining operations in the asteroid belt, communication signals from the inhabited worlds, but still no military ships. "Sir," called the sensor operator, "we're detecting civilian traffic throughout the system. Cargo haulers, passenger transports, research vessels, all operating normally." "As if they don't know we're here," added another officer. Vexthor studied the tactical display. 14,000 warships had just entered their space, and the humans were acting like it was a normal day. Either they were the most confident species in the galaxy, or they had completely lost their minds. "Open a channel to all human vessels in the system," he commanded. "Tell them to prepare for surrender or destruction." Before the communication officer could send the message, something appeared on their screens that made everyone on the bridge freeze. A single human ship had emerged from behind the largest gas giant in the system. It was tiny compared to the alien fleet, no bigger than one of their escort vessels. The ship was called the UES Defiance. It was a Corvette-class vessel, designed for patrol duty and minor conflicts. Against 14,000 alien warships, it looked like a minnow facing a school of sharks. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Maria Santos stood calmly at her command station. She had left her farm on New Montana 3 days ago, when the call came for experienced officers to return to duty. Now she faced the largest fleet in galactic history, with a crew of 37 people and a ship that was 20 years old. "Captain," said her tactical officer, "I'm reading 14,612 enemy vessels. They outgun us by a factor of, well, a lot." Santos smiled. "Thank you for that precise military assessment, Lieutenant." Her crew chuckled despite their fear. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing exactly what it meant. They were not here to win a battle. They were here to send a message. "Open a channel to the alien fleet," Santos ordered. "All frequencies." The communication system crackled to life, broadcasting her voice to every ship in the enemy armada, across 14,000 bridges, Alien commanders leaned forward to hear what the lone human captain had to say. "This is Captain Maria Santos of the United Earth ship Defiance," she said, her voice steady and clear. "You are trespassing in human space. You have 30 minutes to withdraw before we consider you hostile." The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then the alien fleet erupted in laughter. On the bridge of the Galactic Fury, Admiral Vexthor's officers were practically falling out of their chairs with amusement. The Krillian warriors roared with laughter. The ethereal commanders shared their mirth through their mental networks. Even the usually serious Zephyrian hive minds buzzed with what passed for humor among their species. "Did she just threaten us?" asked the second in command, wiping tears from his eyes. "One ship against our entire fleet," laughed another officer. "These humans must be completely insane." But Admiral Vexthor was not laughing. He had spent too many years fighting battles to dismiss any enemy completely, no matter how outmatched they appeared. Still, the situation was absurd. One small ship, threatening the largest armada in galactic history. He opened his own communication channel. "Human Captain, this is Admiral Vexthor of the Galactic Council Forces. You face the combined might of 12 civilizations. Our fleet numbers in the thousands. Our weapons can destroy planets. Surrender now, and your death will be swift." There was a pause before Santos replied. When she did, her voice carried the same calm confidence as before. "Admiral, I appreciate the information about your fleet size. My sensors had already told me that. But you seem to have missed something important in my message." "And what is that?" Santos checked the chronometer on her command console. "You now have 29 minutes and 58 seconds to withdraw from human space." Then she cut the transmission. The alien fleet sat in stunned silence. No species in galactic history had ever spoken to the Council forces with such casual dismissal. Pirates begged for mercy when faced with a single Council ship. Entire star systems surrendered when they saw a Council patrol, but this lone human captain was giving them ultimatums. "She's bluffing," said Vexthor's tactical officer. "She has to be. What can one ship do against our entire fleet?" The Admiral was beginning to wonder the same thing, but something about the human captain's tone bothered him. She had not sounded desperate or afraid. She had not even sounded particularly brave. She had sounded professional, like someone doing a job they had done many times before. "Sir," called the sensor operator. "The human ship is maintaining position. They're not running or trying to hide. Are they charging weapons? No, sir. They appear to be just waiting." Vexthor studied the tactical display. The Defiance hung in space like a tiny speck against the backdrop of stars. It made no aggressive moves. It sent no distress calls. It simply waited, as if 30 minutes was a reasonable amount of time for 14,000 ships to pack up and leave. "Perhaps we should destroy them now," suggested the weapons officer. "Show them what happens when someone threatens the Council." "No," said Vexthor. "I want to see what they do when their time runs out." Minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. The alien fleet maintained their formation, weapons ready, but not firing. The human ship continued to wait with mechanical patience. Throughout the Proxima system, civilian traffic went about its business as if nothing unusual was happening. 25 minutes passed, then 28. The tension on the alien bridges grew with each passing second. What were the humans planning? Was this some kind of psychological warfare? Were they trying to buy time for reinforcements to arrive? Long-range sensors showed no sign of additional human ships anywhere in the system. If this was a delaying tactic, it was not working. The Council fleet was ready for anything the humans could throw at them. At exactly 29 minutes and 59 seconds, Captain Santos opened the channel again. "Admiral Vexthor," she said, her voice carrying the same professional calm as before. "Your time is up. You are now considered hostile forces in human space." "And what exactly do you intend to do about it?" Vexthor replied, his patience finally wearing thin. Santos paused for just a moment. When she spoke again, there was something different in her voice. Not fear or anger, but something that sounded almost like pity. "We're going to defend our home." The transmission ended. For a few seconds, nothing happened. The alien fleet waited for the lone human ship to do something suicidal and pointless. They expected a futile attack that would be over in seconds. Instead, space itself began to change around them. What had appeared to be empty vacuum suddenly shimmered like heat waves on a summer day. Stars that had been visible moments before vanished behind shapes that materialized out of nowhere. the darkness between worlds filled with lights that had not been there seconds ago. All across the Proxima system, things that had been hidden revealed themselves. And Admiral Vexthor realized with growing horror that he had led his fleet into the largest trap in galactic history. The universe exploded into light and motion around the alien fleet. What had been empty space moments before suddenly swarmed with human ships, emerging from stealth fields so advanced that even the Council's best sensors had failed to detect them. Admiral Vexthor watched in growing shock as his tactical display updated with new contacts every second. One ship became 10, 10 became 100, 100 became 1,000. The numbers kept climbing until the display could barely track them all. "Report," he shouted to his sensor operator. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. Ships are decloaking everywhere. The asteroid belt, the gas giant rings, even in the outer comet cloud. I count over 8,000 human vessels. 8,000 ships. The humans had hidden an entire fleet in a single star system, invisible to the most advanced detection systems the galaxy had ever produced. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the ships themselves. The human vessels that appeared were nothing like the primitive craft the Council had expected. These were sleek, deadly machines that moved through space like hunting predators. Their hulls gleamed with armor that seemed to bend light around it. Their weapons glowed with energies that made the air itself hum with power. "Sir," called the weapons officer, his voice shaking. "Those ships are armed with technology I don't recognize. Energy readings are off the charts." But the ships were only the beginning. Throughout the Proxima system, structures that had been disguised as civilian installations began to transform. Mining platforms revealed themselves as heavily armed fortress stations. Research outposts opened like deadly flowers, bristling with weapon systems that dwarfed anything in the Council fleet. The asteroid belt itself came alive as rocks that had seemed natural showed their true purpose. They were not asteroids at all, but camouflaged weapons platforms, each one capable of destroying a battleship with a single shot. "How?" whispered Vexthor's second-in-command. "How did they hide all of this?" The Admiral was beginning to understand. Every human expansion into space, every mining operation, every research station had been part of a plan that was decades in the making. While the Council had seen primitive colonists struggling to survive on hostile worlds, the humans had been building the most sophisticated defense network in galactic history. But the greatest shock was yet to come. The gas giant that had hidden, the Defiance began to split open like a piece of fruit. The planet's atmosphere peeled back in sections, revealing that what they had thought was a natural world was actually an artificial construction of impossible size. "By the void," breathed the tactical officer. "That's not a planet, it's a ship." The artificial world was larger than any space station ever built. It was a construction that made the Council's greatest achievements look like children's toys. Weapons that could crack moons emerged from its surface. Engines that could move mountains roared to life. The fake planet began to turn, revealing gun ports that stretched for hundreds of miles along its artificial surface. Captain Santos watched from the bridge of the Defiance as her home system revealed its true nature. She had grown up on one of the mining stations that was now showing its weapons. She had served on construction crews that had built the hidden fleet. For 20 years, she had helped prepare for this day. "All human forces, this is Captain Santos," she broadcast to the fleet. "Welcome to the Proxima Defense Network. Let's show our visitors what we've been building." The response came back from 8,000 ships at once. "Acknowledged, Captain. Ready to defend human space." On the bridge of the Galactic Fury, panic was starting to set in among the Council officers. They had expected to face a few dozen primitive human ships with crude weapons. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by a fleet that matched their own in numbers and appeared to exceed them in technology. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked the weapons officer. Admiral Vexthor stared at the tactical display. The situation had changed completely in the space of a few minutes. His fleet was still powerful, still capable of terrible destruction, but the humans had turned the entire star system into a fortress. Even worse, they had done it without the Council realizing what was happening. "The humans were never primitive," he said quietly. "They were hiding." "Sir?" "Every intelligence report, every scout mission, every diplomatic contact, the humans let us see exactly what they wanted us to see. They made us think they were weak so we would underestimate them." The truth was becoming clear. While the Council had spent centuries fighting each other for control of the galaxy, The humans had been preparing for the day when the established powers would try to stop their expansion. They had turned their apparent weakness into their greatest strength. "Admiral," called the communication officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the artificial planet." The main screen activated, showing a human face that Vexthor recognized from intelligence files. Admiral Teresa Chen, the commander of the Human Defense Forces. She was President Chen's younger sister, and she had been building this trap for 20 years. "Admiral Vexthor," she said calmly, "I am Admiral Chen of the Proxima Defense Network. You and your fleet are completely surrounded. Your ships are outgunned and outnumbered. I am offering you one chance to surrender." Vexthor felt his warrior pride flare up. "We represent 12 species and 10,000 years of galactic civilization. We do not surrender to upstart primitives." Admiral Chen's expression did not change. "Very well. You have chosen your path." She looked at something off-screen. "All human forces weapons free. Defend human space." The battle began with a sound that no one heard but everyone felt. 8,000 human ships opened fire simultaneously, their weapons painting space with beams of energy that turned night into day. The fortress stations added their own firepower, sending streams of destruction that could melt continents. But it was the artificial planet that provided the most devastating surprise. Weapons that had been designed to crack moons fired at the Council fleet, each shot containing enough energy to power a star system for a year. The Council fleet, caught completely off guard, struggled to respond. Their ships were designed to fight enemies they could see coming. They were not prepared for a battle where the enemy had turned an entire star system into a weapon. The first exchange lasted exactly 43 seconds. When the light faded and the energy dissipated, the tactical displays told a story that would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. Nearly 4,000 Council ships had been destroyed or disabled in less than a minute. The humans had not lost a single vessel. "Impossible," whispered Vexthor's tactical officer. "Our shields should have held. Our armor should have protected us." But the human weapons had cut through Council defenses like they were made of paper. Whatever technology the humans were using, it was far beyond anything the galaxy had seen before. "Sir, we're receiving damage reports from across the fleet," called the communication officer. "The Iron Talon has lost all power. The Void Render is breaking apart. The Starkiller is requesting immediate evacuation." Admiral Vexthor looked at the tactical display and saw his mighty fleet scattered and broken. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were drifting helplessly in space. Crews that had never known defeat were sending out distress calls. The humans had not just won the opening battle, they had won it so completely that the concept of victory had been redefined. "Admiral," came Admiral Chen's voice over the communication system, "you have seen what we are capable of. Your fleet is broken. Your ships are helpless. But we are not monsters. Surrender now, and we will treat your crews with honor. Continue to fight, and we will be forced to destroy you completely." Vexthor realized that he had led his fleet into a trap that was 20 years in the making. The humans had never been the primitive species the Council thought they were. They had been planning, building, and preparing for this exact moment. And now, surrounded by the wreckage of the greatest armada in galactic history, he finally understood why the humans had stayed so calm when faced with the Council's ultimatum. They had not been unmoved because they were weak or foolish. They had been unmoved because they were absolutely terrifyingly ready. 3 days after the Battle of Proxima Centauri, the surviving ships of the Council fleet limped back to Nexus Prime. What had been the greatest armada in galactic history was now a collection of damaged vessels carrying the wounded pride of 12 species. Admiral Vexthor stood in the medical bay of his flagship, watching doctors treat the survivors they had pulled from destroyed ships. The humans had kept their word about treating prisoners with honor. Instead of finishing off the disabled Council vessels, they had actually helped with rescue operations. That somehow made the defeat worse. "How many ships did we lose?" he asked his second-in-command, who was nursing a broken arm from when their bridge had been hit. "Final count is 6,214 vessels destroyed or too damaged to repair. Another 3,000 are operational but badly damaged. We lost over 2 million crew members." The numbers were staggering. In less than an hour, the humans had crippled the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever assembled. And they had done it while losing fewer than 50 ships of their own. "What about casualties on the human side?" His officer checked the reports that had been shared with them. Fewer than 10,000 wounded. Less than 3,000 dead. Vexthor closed his eyes. the greatest military disaster in galactic history, and the humans had barely been scratched. The Council had sent 12 species to destroy one, and that one species had crushed them like insects. Back on Nexus Prime, the emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in their long history. The great chamber that had echoed with confident war plans 3 days ago now buzzed with fear and confusion. Ambassador Thexmar of the Krillians looked like he had aged a century in 3 days. His red scales had lost their luster, and his yellow eyes burned with shame instead of rage. How did our intelligence fail so completely? The ethereal representative floated lower than usual, its glow dim with defeat. The humans deceived us all. Every report, every observation, every diplomatic contact was carefully managed to make us underestimate them. They played a game that lasted decades, added the Vorthak ambassador, its bark-like skin rustling with agitation. While we saw primitive colonists, they were building the most advanced military force in the galaxy. The Zephyrian hive mind spoke in its usual unison, but the voices carried a note of respect that had never been there before. They are not primitive. They never were primitive. They are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. In ours, the center of the great chamber, a new chair had been hastily installed. It was simple compared to the ornate thrones of the other species, made of plain metal and synthetic materials. But somehow it dominated the entire room just by being there. The chair was empty, waiting for humanity's representative to arrive. President Sarah Chen had left Earth that morning, traveling to Nexus Prime aboard a ship that was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. The UES Diplomatic, as the humans called it, looked more like a work of art than a spacecraft. Its hull was smooth and elegant, and it moved through space with a grace that made the Council's finest ships look clumsy. More importantly, it was escorted by 12 human warships that the Council's sensors could barely detect. The message was clear: humanity was coming to the negotiating table, but they were not coming defenseless. Chen arrived at Nexus Prime exactly on schedule. She walked through the corridors of the great station with calm confidence, flanked by a small security detail that looked more like an honor guard than bodyguards. The aliens they passed stared at her with a mixture of fear and curiosity. This was the leader of the species that had just redefined galactic warfare. When she entered the council chamber, the assembled ambassadors fell silent. Chen walked to her new chair without hurry, nodded politely to the other representatives, and sat down as if she had been attending these meetings her entire life. "Honorable ambassadors," she said, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. "Thank you for this opportunity to address the council." Thexmar was the first to find his voice. "President Chen, your species has impressed us with their military capabilities. We had not realized the extent of human technological advancement." Chen smiled. It was not a cruel smile or a mocking one. It was the patient smile of a teacher addressing confused students. "Ambassador Thexmar, we have never hidden our capabilities. We simply never felt the need to show them off." "You destroyed the greatest fleet in galactic history," said the ethereal representative, its mental voice tinged with something that might have been awe. "We defended our home," Chen replied simply. "That is what any species would do when threatened." The Vorthak ambassador leaned forward, its many eyes focusing on Chen. "What do you want from us? Tribute? Subjugation of our worlds? The dissolution of the council?" Chen looked surprised by the question. "Why would we want any of those things? We came to the galaxy seeking trade partners and friends, not subjects or enemies." "Then what are your terms?" asked Thexmar. Chen reached into her briefcase and pulled out a simple document. "Our terms are simple. First, recognition of human territorial claims in the regions we currently occupy. Second, establishment of fair trade agreements between human colonies and council worlds. Third, acceptance of humanity as an equal partner in galactic governance." She slid copies of the document across the table to each ambassador. "In exchange, we offer to share certain technologies that might benefit all species, and we pledge to use our military capabilities to protect smaller civilizations from aggression." The ambassadors stared at the documents in shock. They had expected demands for surrender, for tribute, for the complete restructuring of galactic civilization. Instead, the humans were asking for things that any reasonable species might request. "That's all?" asked the Zephyrian hive mind. "That's all," Chen confirmed. "We never wanted to conquer anyone. We just wanted to be left alone to build our lives among the stars." But when you threatened us with destruction, we had to show you why that was a bad idea." The council chamber fell silent as the ambassadors absorbed this information. The species that could have dominated the entire galaxy was asking only for equal treatment and the right to exist in peace. Thexmar was the first to speak. "President Chen, on behalf of the Krillian Empire, I formally recognize human territorial claims and accept humanity as a full member of the Galactic Council." One by one, the other ambassadors followed suit. The Ethereals offered their psychic networks for faster communication. The Zephyrians promised to share their biological technologies. Even the proud Glacial Empire, which had never acknowledged any species as equal, formally welcomed humanity to the galaxy. As the ceremony concluded, Chen stood and addressed the assembled representatives one final time. "Honorable ambassadors, the galaxy is large enough for all of us. We look forward to working together to build a better future for every species among the stars." But before she left, she added one final comment that would be remembered for generations. "I hope this has been a learning experience for everyone. We humans have a saying. It's better to be prepared and not need something than to need something and not be prepared. We've been preparing for this day since we first looked up at the stars." She paused, her eyes meeting those of each ambassador in turn. "We never wanted war. We wanted peace. But we prepared for both. Now that we understand each other, let's work together to make sure this kind of misunderstanding never happens again." As President Chen left the chamber, the galaxy began to adjust to its new reality. Humanity was no longer the primitive species on the galactic frontier. They were the newest superpower, and perhaps the most dangerous one ever encountered. But more importantly, they had proven something that would reshape galactic civilization forever. Sometimes the species that talked the least about their strength was the one you should worry about the most. The Galactic Council had declared war on humanity, expecting easy victory over a weak opponent. Instead, they had awakened something that had been quietly waiting in the dark between the stars. Something patient, prepared, and utterly determined to protect its home. The humans had stayed unmoved in the face of impossible odds, not because they were weak, but because they were stronger than anyone had ever imagined. And now that the galaxy knew the truth, peace was not just possible, it was inevitable. After all, no one wanted to fight a war they knew they could not win.